A poor defensive effort saw the Blue Jackets' winning streak come to an end on Saturday. They go again today versus LA, and hopefully they are going to get right back into the thick of the playoff race. We're going to unpack all of that on today's Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get things started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. I also want to thank you for making us the #1 sports podcast network. Lots to talk about today. I want to talk about Saturday's game against Utah, which was a real tale of two games, if I'm being honest. But I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the upcoming schedule for the Blue Jackets, which is looking challenging. And I want to talk about today's game against the LA Kings. I was going to say tonight's game, but it's an afternoon game on a Monday. Weird. I know why, but still weird. So all of that to get into. I want to start off with the Utah game, which was kind of a mess, if we're being honest, right? Like very, very poor defensively. I thought really hung Elvis out to dry. Now, I don't think Elvis had a great game. I think he allowed almost 3 goals more than he should have, based on, expected goal metrics and whatnot. But also you look at the goals, like you look at the chances that were allowed to turn into goals, right? Like there was that diabolical 2-on-0. That somehow both Utah players just managed to skate in between Werenski and Provorov, who were doing something, I'm sure. There was another clear breakaway. There was that I think it was the first goal where they had that really stupid line change, and then Matejchuk and Marchment collided, and that left the Utah player wide open to just kind of fire the puck. And again, not a great play by Elvis on that, but I feel like those are the shots that he allows the most, which are really frustrating because they're from like 30 feet away and you're not being challenged at all. But somehow those are the ones that managed to find their way in. So like, again, not a great night from Elvis, all things considered, but I also think he got basically zero help from every defenseman. Again, like Matejchuk, I thought had a pretty poor defensive game. I thought Provorov had a poor defensive game. I thought Werenski wasn't great, but Werenski did just come back from like 4 or 5 days of norovirus, and I guess just like puking anything up that got within range. So he gets a pass for not being 100% in this game, but like none of the defensemen had great games. I thought. Again, Gabranson and Zamula were kind of a non-factor. Just, I don't know, like just a very bad defensive game. Even the guys that had good offensive games. So again, like Ivan Provorov and Denton Matejchuk, that pairing created a lot of offense. Unfortunately, they also let quite a lot of goals just slide right past them. So Ivan Provorov was on the ice for 3-4 and 2 against at 5-on-5. Denton Matejchuk was on the ice for 2-4 and 2 against, also at 5-on-5. Like again, I'm not. I feel like I'm picking on this pairing specifically, but they felt like the most notable screw ups, right? That was again, they created a lot of offense, but the defense that they gave up felt timely, let's say. And I thought what was interesting after the game was Rick Bowness talked about it, and he said, well, I like that we came back to get a point. And all of the mistakes that happened are correctable, which I liked. I think a lot about, Dean Everson, and maybe it's a case of, probably a little bit of a case of kicking Everson while he's down from me, and also potentially a little bit of like, sometimes it's how the message is sent, or how the tone of voice is, or what phrases and words are used, etc. But I feel like that, to me, saying, oh yeah, there were mistakes, but they're correctable ones, to me feels a lot better than listening to a post-game conference and the coach going, well, we know what we need to work on. and then not really elaborating on much of it. There was a lot of post-game conferences where people would say, are you worried about this? Are you worried about that? And he's like, no, not really. We're just going to keep working on stuff. But bonus, again, he called out specifically, I think, that 2-0 with, I believe it was Werenski and Provorov. And, it's like, yeah, it's a correctable mistake. There was, again, one goal that came as a result of a bad line change. There was one goal that came as a result of, I don't remember who it was specifically, but skated into the zone, fired the puck, missed the net, and then the puck came all the way back around the board, and the rush went the other way. So, again, correctable mistakes. All in all, one of those games, I think, where you're like, yeah, great that they came back to get a point. And again, the offense, and I feel like I've talked a lot about how bad the defense was, but the offense I thought was really very good. Like, again, you've got Mathieu Olivier with another goal, David Severson with a goal, and then Adam Fantilli with his 5th goal in 6 games. He's sneaking up on 20 goals right now. So, 20 to 25 goals, very realistic for Fantilli at this moment in time. Mason Marchment got a goal, had one of the best sellies I've seen. Potentially the best selly since the time his gum fell out of his mouth and he picked it back up and put it in as a celebration. But to get 4 different goal scorers, to get 2 lines going, again, like goal and an assist for Fantilli, goal and an assist for Marchment, goal and an assist for Marchenko, and then Coyle, Olivier, and Severson also. So 6 Blue Jackets had multi-point games. And again, good to see the Fantilli line taking charge of that comeback, right? And again, I don't know how many people, I don't know if you'll remember this, but there was that one chance not long after the Blue Jackets tied the game at 4-4, actually. I don't know whether it was at even strength or not, but Adam Fantilli, again, comes barreling down, and Karel Vejmelka just gets his skate, like the blade of his skate, on the puck. And it's, again, hockey's a game of inches, right? But they came so close to making it 5-4 in regulation. They didn't. They lost in overtime. Again, a weird play. Connor Garland, Ivan Provorov get mixed up. They both lose their man, and also somehow someone still doesn't get covered. And it's just, yeah, not a great play in overtime by either of those guys. Choosing Connor Garland to go out in overtime in his first game with the team feels strange to me. There's such a small margin for error at 3-on-3, and I liked Connor Garland's debut for the most part. Right, again, he passed the eye test for me. Was a reasonable factor. He basically came out 50-50 in terms of possession numbers. But I thought that he set up a lot of really good scoring chances for his line. Obviously, he set up Kent Johnson to score that power play goal, which then got taken off the board because the Mammoth hate fun and love offside challenges. But there is work to be done still, which is fine. This team is a work in progress. Annoyingly, there were a lot of points that went around outside of the Blue Jackets, so they didn't get a ton of scoreboard help, which we'll talk about in a minute, because I want to talk about what the standings look like and where they have to go from here. But again, a real game of 2 halves, right? Like a really good offensive effort, and then a really very poor defensive effort, and then a goalie that kind of, again, didn't play great, but also got 0 help. So I'm not going to sit here and say that Elvis is not I'm not going to sit here and say that Elvis played great and he got completely bailed out. We've seen games before, right, where the goalie plays great and, again, just gets completely dumped on by his team. It's tough for a goalie when you are fighting both the 5 skaters on the other side of the ice as well as your own 5 skaters. But I do still think that there were maybe 1 or 2 saves in there that I would have liked him to have. On the flip side, he made a bunch of saves that I was convinced should be goals or would be goals. There was one insane one that he basically had his skate on the goal line and the puck bounced off the skate and then back out as he was stretching across. And then there was another, he did a lot of very athletic looking stretching saves in this game, which always amuses me and also always entertains people, right? There was a lot of flashy saves. So again, Elvis made a lot of good saves, allowed some goals that maybe he shouldn't have. It's story of Elvis, right? But he got very little help in this game. So again, I feel like I'm dumping on Elvis, and I'm really not, because I do think the defense was most of the problem in this game that was masked by the fact that the Blue Jackets managed to have that insane almost comeback, right? Was it 2 goals in 34 seconds or something like that? 30 seconds exactly. Adam Fantilli scored at 13:38 of the third period. Mason Marchment scored at 14:08 of the third period. So really, really close to being a very fun comeback game. They fell just short, but frankly, the effort, like the defensive effort in this game, I'll take 1 point. It's a Western Conference team. They didn't give up any points to someone that they're chasing or someone that's chasing them. I'll take a point over no points, right? Like, again, when it was 4-2, I think I tweeted something like, I don't think they have another 3 goals in them. And I was technically right, but about 3 minutes after that, they did mount that comeback. So maybe I should be more negative on Twitter, is what I'm saying here. I'm not going to be, but every time I complain about something, it feels like they try and spite me. So maybe I should just complain about the power play more. I don't know. But overall, again, some good, some bad. I'm not super worried about this game. If it had been a complete nightmare, then maybe I would be a little bit worried. But we've seen that the Blue Jackets can outscore their woes before. It's not like the best strategy, but again, we've seen them win a lot of different ways, especially under Rick Bonus, right? Like we've seen the 1-0 win, we've seen the 7-5 win or the 8-5 win, I think it was, over Tampa, who they play later this week. And they play them tomorrow, actually, which I'm sure will be fun based on what just happened in Tampa last night. But, we've seen them win and lose in a lot of different ways this season. And if they come out flat tonight and there's another, terrible defensive effort, then maybe start to worry. But at this point, I am kind of leaning towards giving Rick Bonus the benefit of the doubt, right? Like you look at, for example, the Ottawa Senators game, which was like the 4th game of his tenure with Columbus. They looked awful in that game, and everybody wrote them off and were like, oh, same old Blue Jackets. They had that 3-game new coach bump, and now they're back, and then they ripped off 7 wins in a row immediately after that, right? They looked good against Boston and good against the Islanders and still lost anyway. They almost had a meltdown against the Rangers and then came back and looked good against the Predators and looked great against the Panthers. Half looked good against the Mammoth and half looked bad. So again, I don't know which Blue Jackets team we're going to get tonight. I don't know which goalie we're going to get either. Again, we'll talk about that game in a minute here, but I want to take a quick break and then talk about the schedule this week, because this is it's not like the biggest week of the season for them, but based on what happened at the weekend, it's kind of necessary that the Blue Jackets get 4 or 5 points out of this week, and we'll see how that goes. But we'll talk about that in just a second here at Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I want to tell you about Quo. Spring is a natural reset point, and if there's one thing that can quietly cost businesses money, it's messy communication. Missed calls, scattered texts, no clear thread of who said what, and that's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Quo, the smarter way to run your business communications. Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2. They've got over 3,000 reviews and are trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, which lets your team share one business number so you never miss a call, text, or opportunity. Everything lives in one clean thread, calls, texts, and voicemails, and the whole team can see the conversation, so nothing has fallen through the cracks. You don't have to play phone tag. You don't have to be like, hey, did you say this? Did you say that? Like, who last responded to the customer? None of that. It's all in one place, and it makes your business feel more organized and responsive. Make this the season that no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedonnhl. That's quo.com/LOCKEDONNHL. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. The trade deadline is gone and past, but you can still sign up for the Everydayers Club. If you use code MARCH, you're going to get your first month for free. You get ad-free shows, access to the group chat in Discord, and if you're signed up before the NCAA tournament kicks off, you can get into the Everydayer bracket pool on Discord for a chance to win some Locked On merch, which should be a ton of fun. Head to lockedonbluejackets.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes. Let's talk about the standings, because the Blue Jackets, it was kind of worst case scenario. last night for the Blue Jackets. What they wanted was for the Penguins-Bruins game to end in regulation. Ideally with the Bruins winning, because that gave the Blue Jackets slightly better odds to make the playoffs, and also they have points that they can take off of the Bruins still. They still have 2 games against them. However, Bruins blew it. They had a 3-1 lead and then a 4-3 lead, and then they lost, I believe, 5-4 in overtime to the Penguins, because of course they did. 3-point game. The Blue Jackets are now sitting 3 points back of the Bruins. They are 4 points back of the Islanders in the 3rd Metropolitan seed spot, and they are 5 back of Pittsburgh in the 2nd Metropolitan seed spot. They're also 5 points back of the 2nd wildcard spot currently held by the Montreal Canadiens, who the Blue Jackets also have 2 games to play against still. So that should be fun. This is not the end of the world, right? Again, like the ideal would have been if Boston had won in regulation, and then the Blue Jackets would have been, I believe, 4 points away from both Boston and Pittsburgh. The Islanders also won, which is why they're back to 4 points ahead of the Blue Jackets. They beat the Sharks in overtime, I believe. And the Bruins also, I want to say the Bruins beat the Washington Capitals this weekend as well. So there's been a lot of the teams that the Blue Jackets are chasing have been picking up points, which is frustrating. There's still some good news. Blue Jackets still have a game in hand over Pittsburgh and the Bruins, and they've got 2 games in hand over the Islanders. So they also picked up a point against the Mammoth, right? Like, again, that's why that point is big. It's obviously 2 would have been ideal, but with the Blue Jackets, every point counts, and I will take an overtime loss over a regulation loss every day of the week, right? They're still 7-1-2 in their last 10 games, which is hotter than any other team that they're chasing right now. You have to watch out for the Senators, who are coming up behind them. They're 7-1-2 in their last 10 games. They've got 71 points, so 2 behind the Blue Jackets. And the Carolina Hurricanes, who are basically out of reach now, I think, with 86 points, so 13 ahead of the Blue Jackets. They're also 7-2-1. But like the Penguins are 4-3-3 in their last 10. The Islanders are 6-4. The Canadiens are 6-1-3. The Bruins are 5-2-3. Like, if you want to throw in the Red Wings, who are 6 points ahead of the Blue Jackets, they're 4-4-2, and they've just lost their captain, Dylan Larkin, for an unspecified amount of time. Like, it's not time to worry. Again, I still think the Penguins might fall off. They're going to be without Evgeny Malkin for another, I think, 4 games. I don't know when Sidney Crosby's going to be coming back. Like, they've got a really tough schedule for the month of March. Like, there's, again, lots of moving parts still. I still think, again, even though we pay attention to all of this, you focus on yourself, right? If you get stuck scoreboard watching, then sometimes you get in trouble there. But the Blue Jackets, they don't super control their own destiny necessarily, but they're still in a really good spot. And again, a win today against LA puts them 1 point behind Boston, 2 behind the Islanders, 3 behind the Penguins. I don't know off the top of my head whether any of those teams play today, but again, Blue Jackets have games in hand over all of them. All of those teams are idle. The only games, I guess, that we have to pay attention to today is Ottawa is in Vancouver, and Washington faces Calgary. Now, I think Washington is basically out of it, and they kind of signaled that they were taking a step back. Yeah, they're 4 points behind the Blue Jackets with 2 games played, 2 games more played. They also sold at the deadline, which was very surprising to me. So really, I think the Senators are who you've got to worry about, potentially the Flyers, but I'm not convinced by them. So we want Vancouver to beat Ottawa tonight, hopefully. It's a tall ask for Vancouver, who are miserably bad this season, especially since losing Quinn Hughes. But the Blue Jays have a chance to make up some ground tonight. Again, if they win tonight against the Kings, then that lead gets smaller again. And again, they will take advantage of this game in hand that they have, right? Unfortunately, after this game, the Blue Jackets get to play Tampa Bay, who just had that exciting, I guess, game against the Buffalo Sabres, where there were approximately 700 penalty minutes handed out. I believe it was an 8-7 final victory for the Sabres. So I'm going to guess that the Lightning are mad about that. They may or may not be without some players, depending on injuries and or calls from Department of Player Safety. I don't think anything's going to come of this. Like, maybe Hagel gets fined for losing his mind and trying to murder Rasmus Dahlin, but It's still going to be a tough game. Blue Jackets play today. They're going to be going into Tampa, so they have to play today and then travel. Luckily, it's a 4 p.m. game, so the game should be done by like 6:30. They could be on the plane by, I don't know, man, like an hour and a half, 2 hours, maybe, depending on how on the ball the equipment guys are. Like, they could be in Tampa by like 10 p.m. And that's basically a normal night's sleep. They get up, they play Tampa at a normal time tomorrow, then they get a rest, and then they have to play Florida, which obviously they just beat them last week in what I thought was a very good game that the Blue Jackets got kind of lucky in with that goalie interference call that people still seem contentious about. And then they play Florida. They play the Flyers, which again could end up being a big game. So tough week, big week. Again, of the 4 games that they play, I think I said that they needed 4 or 5 points, but that's because I forgot that they were playing the Flyers. They need 7 points, I think, 6 or 7 points out of this 4-game stretch. And again, whether that's like 2 wins and 2 overtime losses or 3 wins and a loss, I don't know, but you need to win you need to win minimum 2 of these games. It'd be nice if you could win all 4. Blue Jackets have beaten all 4 of these teams already this season. That's LA, Tampa, Florida, and Philadelphia. And especially you're then going to go next week into the Carolina Hurricanes, which is going to be a really tough game. So again, you need to bank your points with opponents like this. Again, the Panthers have figured it out a little bit. Obviously, they were really kind of reeling when the Blue Jackets played them last week. They've since figured it out a little bit. They won their most recent game, but they're still only 3-7 in their last 10, and they're almost 10. They're 8 points behind the Blue Jackets in the standings, right? So that's a team that you've got to beat. Tampa could go either way. Again, Tampa's a very, very good team, and I'm not going to sit here and suggest that the Blue Jackets are going to walk into Tampa and find that to be an easy game. But again, the Blue Jackets have beaten Tampa already this season. I think twice they've beaten them. I might be wrong about that, but they've beaten them at least once because it was that 8-5 game that had everybody very excited. The Blue Jackets beat them 3-2 at the beginning of the season and then beat them 8-5 middle of January. So they have a chance to sweep the season series here, knock on wood. But this, like I said, a lot of moving parts. Nothing is done yet. Focus on tonight's game and then move on. But it's a big week in Blue Jackets land because they need to get points, especially if teams like Boston and Pittsburgh are going to keep winning games, which it seems like they're considering. Would love if they considered doing the opposite of that. Let's take another quick break and then let's talk about the Kings game tonight because the Kings continue to be one of the weirdest teams in the NHL. And I'll explain why that is in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I'm going to tell you about Game Time. There's nothing like being in an NBA arena. The crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets, that part hasn't always been so simple, though. And that's why Game Time has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast without the hassle. It puts the advantage back where it belongs with the fans. I'm not an NBA guy, you know this, but I use Game Time for NHL tickets all the time. When I'm in the States, when I'm in Canada, I'm going to be at the Blue Jackets game in Montreal in April, and you better believe that we used Game Time for that. It had the best prices. There was no surprise fees at checkout. We were able to see the view from the seat before we bought it, which made the decision super, super easy. Everything was quick, intuitive, and stress-free from start to finish. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today, and remember, it's gametime.co, not .com. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. Let's talk about the Kings real quick because the Blue Jackets have beaten them once already this season, 3-1. That was, I believe, the first game where they didn't have Zach Werenski, and I also believe that's the game where all 3 goals they scored on the power play, which was an insane game, and I don't think that's repeatable because why would it be? But the Kings are on the struggle bus at the minute, let's say. They did the Blue Jackets a big favor by beating the Islanders a couple of games ago, but that's one of only 3 wins in their last 10 games. They're 3-6-1. They beat the Islanders, Calgary, and they beat Philadelphia in overtime. again, they're a really, really weird team. They went up, they got Panarin just before the Olympic break, and everyone was like, "Oh, okay, this is the Kings are buying in, right?" And then I believe they proceeded to lose. I want to say the first 3 or 4 games in the Panarin era, which is obviously not ideal. They somehow both sold and bought at the deadline, which was also weird. They ended up getting Scott Lawton from Toronto for a 3rd-round pick, and then they sold Warren Fogle and Corey Perry to teams in the East. I want to say Ottawa got Fogle, and Corey Perry went to Tampa Bay, so we'll get to see him tomorrow, which I'm sure will be fun for us all. But like they're such a weird. I don't understand them. They don't do anything on special teams. They're 27th and 28th. They don't score goals. They don't allow a lot of goals. They're 9th in the league in goals against per game. But like their goaltending stats are fine. Darcy Kemper, their starter, has an 896 on the season. Anton Forsberg, their backup, has a 904 on the season. Again, I don't know which goalie the Blue Jackets will be facing. My guess is Kemper if he's healthy right now. Because the Kings didn't play last night and they don't play tomorrow night. But who could really say? This team makes no sense. I keep looking at like the numbers, and then I look at the points, and then I look at the numbers again, and I'm like, how does this team do anything? And partially it's that the Pacific Division is just diabolically bad. But they are a team that I think it's going to be really interesting to see. Can they sneak into the playoffs? And if they do, can they avoid getting sandbagged by the Oilers for like the 5th year in a row? Who can say? Obviously, Panarin is the guy to watch for them. He's got 63 points this season. Now, most of those have been with New York, but I feel like Panarin always has a good game against the Blue Jackets because, of course, he does, ex-Blue Jackets, you know. But other guys to watch, Adrian Kempe's got 5 points in his last 5 games. Alex Laferriere, who is not Alexis Lafreniere, has 3 goals in his last 5 games. Brent Clark has got 4 assists in his last 5 games. Like those are the guys to watch, right? So those are the big names. Laferriere has been a really fun story as a guy that kind of came into the lineup as a 3rd-round pick and has really kind of carved out a niche there. But Kempe has been the Kings' best player for a long time. I assume he's playing on that top line with Panarin and Kopitar as their number 1 line, which is going to be, I'm sure, a nightmare for the Blue Jackets and also most teams. But also, like, again, the Blue Jackets beat them already. I don't know what the Kings are going to show up like tonight. Again, the weird timing of the game. The Kings were in LA on Saturday, I believe. So they had to travel from LA to here. I'm just going to double check that because they might have actually just been in Montreal, but I believe they were in LA. They were. I really want to say that they were in. LA. Yeah, they were in LA. So they had to travel from LA probably yesterday. The body clock is going to be screwed up because it's going to be like a 1 p.m. puck drop for them. Blue Jackets could take advantage of this. Again, Blue Jackets arrested, Kings arrested. I still think it's going to be a weird game. It's probably going to be a really stupid game because, of course, it is. I'm excited about the timing of the game, but I don't think many of the players will be. So, just again, game at a time, right? Beat LA, then worry about Tampa tomorrow. Then you can worry about Florida later this week. Then you can worry about Philadelphia. Then you can worry about Carolina. Like if you start worrying about Carolina now, then that's not going to go well for you. So worry about LA, beat LA. It's very doable. Again, Blue Jackets have done it already this season. LA is a team that is struggling right now. They are a weird team that make no sense. Take advantage of all of this. Adam Fantilli continues to be super hot right now. Again, 5 goals in his last 6 games. Charlie Coyle continues to heat up. I think I looked it up during the game. So he had a goal and an assist in this game, and I believe he had 2 assists in this game. I looked it up. Since Rick Bowness took over on January 12th, I think it was, only Matt Baldy and Leon Draisaitl have more points in the entire NHL than Charlie Coyle. He's got I think he's got 16 points in the last 14 games or whatever it is. It might be since January 28th, actually, not January 12th. I think I had the wrong tab open, but my point stands, right? Charlie Coyle doing some really fun things at the minute. Hopefully he keeps that up. I don't know what the lineup's going to look like. My guess is mostly the same as against Utah. They might shuffle some people around. It sounds like Dmitry Voronkov might work his way back in. I don't know who for. Potentially one of Lundestrom or Wood is what I would do. I think you keep the top six together. Again, that top line continues to impress. The third line is great. The second line looked promising. Didn't score, obviously, or didn't score a legal goal. But the fourth line, I think, is where you can really improve on. And I think sending Voronkov in, and again, Rick Bowness talked yesterday in practice that, you get one bad game and then you're out of the lineup, essentially. And I don't think he means, if you make a bunch of mistakes or, simple mistakes or whatever. I think what he means is if you aren't pulling your weight, then you're out. I don't think this is going to be called fairly. I will be shocked if it is, because we've seen some really poor effort games from some veterans this season. But who knows? Maybe he'll surprise me. But I would love to know if guys like Monahan and Provorov are going to be, and maybe I'm not calling those guys out specifically. They were just the first two veterans that I thought of are going to be treated the same as, for example, Zamula and Voronkov, both of whom have struggled to get into the lineup as of late. So who can say? Let's talk predictions real quick before I run out of time on this episode. I'm going to go with a 3-1 win, just like last time, and I'm going to go with Sean Monahan. I think that second line looked really good against the Utah Mammoth, and again, I thought they were unlucky. They were about half an inch offside, I think, on that goal. And again, they look dangerous. Kent Johnson's flying at the minute. I thought Connor Garland again came as advertised. Monahan has looked much better in recent games. I don't know whether that's because they figured out how to manage his pain more effectively, or whether he's the injury that he has started to heal. I don't know. But let's go with the second line goal, specifically Sean Monahan, and a 3-1 win for the Blue Jackets. I'm locking that in. Get your guesses down below in the YouTube comments, or there's going to be a tweet going up at LO_Blue Jackets, where you can follow me on Twitter, and you can also make your predictions there if you would like to. Thank you for listening to this episode, making it your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. Once again, you can find us on Twitter at LO_Blue Jackets. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about tonight's game, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and also preview tomorrow's game against Tampa. So lots to talk about, I'm sure, because again, I'm convinced that this game is going to be really, really stupid, but maybe they'll surprise me. Who can say? Thank you once again for listening. Don't forget about the Everydayers Club. Use code MARCH to get 1 month free. Just go to lockedonbluejackets.supercast.com and you can get ad-free audio and access to our exclusive Discord server. I think that's everything in my outro. So enjoy the game, and until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.